We're live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Free Zone with Norm. We in the studio, new studio. I guess we can call it a studio. We're actually just kind of hanging out in Derek's new front room here. With me, as always, is Derek. How are you doing this evening, Derek?
I'm exhausted, man. I have been moving for like 5 days, and I'm just really exhausted.
I can see that. Yeah. By the way, 4th of July is coming up. We're 2 days away from the 4th. Today's the 2nd. So
I gotta say, it's pretty quiet with it being July 2nd. I have not. Usually, I was telling Doc's like, "When does it start?" And I was like, "Well, when I was a kid, it started like June 28th is when people will start firing.
July 1st is when they start letting them sell fireworks. So that's usually when they start setting them
But I haven't seen a ton. I mean, I know people are using them, but I haven't seen a ton. Yeah. I haven't heard a ton. Ricky said in Salina that there's quite a few at night, but yeah.
I think there were some last night in Elkhart. I don't know how many. I didn't go outside, but I heard a few.
Yeah.
But yeah. So everybody have a safe and sane 4th of July. Get out there and enjoy yourself. Getting involved with the community things that'll be going on. Nearly every community's got stuff going on.
My question to you is, how patriotic are you? 1 being Farrah Fawcett, 10 being Toby Keith.
Well, I'm pretty patriotic. That is somewhat of a loaded question sometimes. I lean much more toward the Toby Keith than the Farrah Fawcett, I guess.
Yeah.
What made Farrah Fawcett unpatriotic?
Isn't she the one that went to maybe Vietnam?
Oh, that's Jane Fonda.
Okay, Jane Fonda. Yeah. Farrah Fawcett loves this country. Editor strikes that. Take that out of the Daniel Berry Sports says.
No, I very much enjoy the 4th. The 4th's always been a big holiday for us. Mm-hmm. We kind of have a front row seat to the fireworks where we live. So we never leave our own house. We usually cook out. It may just be burgers and hot dogs. A lot of times, though, I fire up the smoker and smoke ribs or smoke a brisket or something like that.
Yeah.
So we have a good time. We enjoy the 4th. By the way, I'd just like to point out for people right here in this area, Rolla is having their 4th of July celebration tomorrow on the 3rd. They'll have their fireworks at sundown tomorrow. And then Elkhart is celebrating on the 4th itself, Friday.
Do they do that staggering so both towns have a shot at like a crowd?
Yeah, Rolla always kind of does that. They always kind of do theirs a night early so that you can go to both. But then this year, Hugoton's doing theirs on the 5th, I believe, Saturday night. So, if you're a fan of fireworks, you can catch 3 fireworks displays right there. Rolla Thursday, Elkhart Friday, Hugoton Saturday. So,
yeah. Our studio looks fake. It looks like we're sitting in front of a green screen here.
Yeah, we are not. That is a real chubby kid back there. Yeah, that's our actual background.
Yeah. Could be AI, Doc. We're not going to let that out. Brina Wilson, I'm pretty sure your relation, says hello.
Hello, Brina.
She's watching, and I have. You want to talk about some music tonight? Yeah, 1991. We are going to talk music. Please, put the word out. Let's get some asses in seats. And but yeah, I used to write down a lot of things each week for you to talk about. Yeah. And then we've kind of been doing music. While I want to put at the bottom of the screen like what we're doing with music and everything.
Right.
And go ahead.
I was going to say a couple things that in the news that we could talk about today. Mm-hmm. The jury returned a verdict of not guilty on 3 of the 5 counts against Diddy and guilty on 2 counts. And I believe the 2 counts that he was found guilty on were transportation for the purposes of prostitution.
Very slap on the wrist comparatively to the ones that were not.
Yeah, definitely not the biggest charges against him. The biggest charge against him would have been the RICO charges, racketeering and influencing.
Like, you remember Hugh Grant got in trouble for some stuff in the 90s, hanging out.
Yeah, but that was different. Okay. Hugh Grant was a John. He was somebody who was visiting a prostitute. Okay. Whereas the charges that Diddy is charged with is more what a pimp would be charged with.
So let's say, I've seen a lot of news sources say he's going to walk, he's going to get a little, let's just say he walks tomorrow. Do you feel like it's, I mean, sure he's going to have some people that'll like him no matter what. Do you feel like what he has gone through public image wise is survivable?
If you'd asked me that 10 or 15 years ago, I would have said no. Today, I don't even know anymore. I mean, people are, I am sometimes baffled by our society and the people that they will elevate and the people that they will cancel. And so, I don't know. You wouldn't think so, but I hate to say no. I do think, though, that he's probably not going to just walk. From what I've seen, he's probably looking at 5 to 10 years anyway.
Yeah.
Now, and also I'd like to point out that these are federal charges. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't know, but I assume he will also eventually face state and local charges as well. But I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing big in the news today is there was an explosion at a fireworks factory in California. Mm-hmm. Last I knew, 7 people were missing.
Jeez.
Don't know much about it other than that. I've seen some of the videos, and the videos were pretty wild. But, explosions at fireworks factories, number one, they do happen. And number two, they are usually large explosions, So we want to send out our thoughts and prayers to all the people, potentially affected by that, the people that are missing and the families of those people. Let's see. Also, in the Idaho 4 murder case.
Oh, yeah. Plea deal.
Yeah. Brian Koberger pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. I
told Steph that, and she was just like, I think he's just trying to avoid a death penalty. That's what Steph said.
Well, that's absolutely what's going on. I mean, you can say that he looked and saw the evidence against him and realized, here's the thing. By pleading, he automatically avoids the death penalty because is it Oregon? I believe it is. In Oregon, no, wait, it's Idaho. Sorry.
Idaho.
Idaho, the death penalty can only be imposed by a jury. So when you plea, your case doesn't go to the jury. So by pleading, he does automatically avoid the death penalty. So yeah, it's if all you're worried is that. But here's my deal. If you ask me which I would rather be sentenced to, death or life in prison, I would take death any day.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison, So to me, I've never understood that whole avoidance of the death penalty. I've never understood. I mean, I get that people have a will to live. I get that everybody wants to go on living. I don't see where spending the rest of your life in prison is any kind of quality of life. But yeah, maybe that's just me.
I'm cool with, we're in Hugoton, cool town. You grew up here. I'm cool with living here forever. Like right now, I have no plans to leave. But if you told me you can't leave Hugoton for the rest of your life, I might choose death. It's like prison really has, it's like just lack of the choice of you're just in this area, Yeah, I think if I would choose the death penalty in a second, over life in prison.
Yeah. I don't know. Anything else? Was there something else you wanted to talk about?
So you might not want to go over this, but I was curious. Okay. I'm going to put the question I'm posing to you on the screen so people kind of know what you're talking about.
Okay.
You have not been prefaced with this. I'm dropping this on you hot. Okay. In your opinion, what is the difference between imperialism and colonialism?
Okay. Well,
here we go. He's going to get the paper out. I guess define the two first, because I might not even know what they mean, but just for the audience.
So imperialism is basically the system of empire. Okay. So here would be a good example. Okay. The Roman Empire. Let's go back to them. We're going to go back into ancient history. Rome's economy was based on warfare. Okay. The Roman legions were not truly Roman legions. They weren't owned or commanded by the Roman government. They were private legions. They were private armies, right? So when they talked about Caesar's legions, Julius Caesar's legions, they were literally his legions. He hired them. He paid them. He equipped them. They were his legions. Okay. And they conducted war for profit. But by doing that, they expanded the Roman Empire after Julius Caesar's day, because prior to Caesar, Rome wasn't an empire, but we'll talk about that some other time. So here's what that meant. It meant that all of the territories, all of the countries that Rome ruled were ruled by a common government, but they were allowed to keep their own, and this was the way the Romans did it. They were allowed to keep their own language. They were allowed to keep their own culture. They were allowed to keep their own religion. Rome didn't impose a language, a culture, or a religion on the subject states. What they did was they paid taxes to Rome in order to become members of the empire. They paid a tribute, monthly or yearly, to be members of the Roman Empire. And they actually got some benefits for that. For a lot of countries, being a member of the Roman Empire was a pretty good deal, even though they may have fought to not be a part of the Roman Empire once they became a member of the empire, because Rome brought with it a lot of public works, highways that are some of which are still in use today in Europe, aqueducts to move water from one place to another so that the towns had water, sewage, sewers, so that there was sewage, and so that there was a sewage system to deal with sewage in cities. The Romans built all of those things, and many of those are still in use in places in Europe today. So that's the difference. So imperialism, you become part of an empire, but that empire doesn't necessarily require you to give up your culture, your language, your religion to be a part of the empire. Okay? Colonialism. Colonialism is when an outside force an outside entity establishes colonies in a place. Okay? So think of the way the New World was colonized by Spain, France, England,
in that order,
Holland, others. You mean in that order? Or what do you mean by in that order? You mean chronologically in that order? No, Spain was first, and then England, Holland, France, they all kind of came after that, but at the same time as each other.
Well, I guess the reason I pose that question is, I guess, if you use the argument okay, America's on stolen land, it was stolen from the natives.
Sure.
Using that mentality, is this the natives' land, or did they confiscate it from somebody else and invite? And again, at what point, who originally owns this land? Using that thinking.
So if we look at human history, all land is stolen land to a certain extent. Okay? Not completely. When the first humans came across the Bering Land Bridge from Asia into North America, there were no other humans here. They were coming into empty land. They still came in and occupied land, but they came in and occupied empty land. Okay? So if there's anybody that has a claim to the land, it would be those people. Okay? Now, the Native Americans then are the descendants of those people, right? But here's the thing. Those native tribes moved around and conducted warfare with each other and took land from each other. Not necessarily all of them, but many of them. The Plains tribes especially were the Plains culture, especially once they got the horse. The Plains culture was essentially a raiding culture and a very warlike culture, right? The Comanche, the Kiowa, the Apache, the Lakota, the Dakota, the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, those were all relatively warlike tribes. There's no point in trying to pretend like they didn't wage war on each other before Europeans showed up over here. They did. Now, I am not enough of an expert to speak on, every native nation or anything like that. I'm certainly not. Or every native culture. I know that there were different cultures in different parts of the country and all of that. I'm not enough of an expert to speak on those, but for the most part, for instance, the Comanche originated in the northern part, probably in Wyoming, up around Devil's Tower and down in there. The Comanche were originally Shoshone, and they broke off from the Shoshone Nation and traveled south. And as they traveled south, they fought the tribes that they encountered, that they came into. As a matter of fact, what today would be labeled the Comancheria on maps was labeled by the Spanish in the 1600s as the Apacheria, because the Apache ruled that. And the Apache were originally a Plains tribe. And then the Spanish document, to a certain extent, what they called a war of extermination between the Comanche and the Apache. And the Apache, who were once a Plains tribe, were literally swept off the plains by the Comanche and became what we think of them as today, which are mountain and desert tribes, right? In places like New Mexico and Arizona, and right? Because they were swept off the plains by the Comanche. And Spanish missionaries and Spanish traders documented a lot of that war between the Comanche and the Apache. So the Native American tribes here were making war on each other well before European settlers showed up, and it continued after. So I'm not saying that to in any way impugn the claims of Native Americans. Yeah. Okay. What I'm saying it to say that the history of humankind, no matter where it is in the world, I'm just giving that as an example. The history of humankind is the history of migration and conquest. One group one group moves, and as they move into the territory of another group, and they are either defeated or they win and they displace that group, and then that creates a domino effect of groups moving and displacing other groups, and so on and so on. Okay? If you look at the history of any part of the world, that's a part of history. Okay? A lot of the great migrations of Europe that we see, like when we see the Vandals and the Goths and the Celts and tribes like that in infringing on the Roman Empire, there's a reason why. It's because the Mongols were moving into Northern Europe. And as they did that, they displaced local tribes, and those tribes displaced other tribes, and those tribes eventually got pushed into the Roman Empire. So that is the history of humankind. Migration and conquest, migration and warfare is the history of humanity.
So my question is, and I'm not trying to be facetious, but if hey Doc, can you bring me one more ocean water package? My question is this: what is the difference between white colonization of America, or whether it be tribes or Mexican, because the whole Alamo thing, there was Mexicans in that.
Yeah.
What is different, I guess, about taking land from somebody?
All right. Technically the U.S. bought the Southwest from Mexico. Oh. However, realistically, they bought the Southwest from Mexico after they defeated Mexico in a war. Okay. So Do you want to say that the U.S. stole the Southwest from Mexico? That's fine. I don't care what language you use. Okay. One way or another, it became part of the United States. Okay. Much of it had already become part of the United States by Mexico losing Texas and Texas's war for independence, right? So there was a Mexican-American War that was fought in the 1840s. However, Mexico had only existed for a little over 20 years when that war occurred, okay? Before that, it was New Spain. Some people might be surprised to learn that New Mexico is actually a whole lot older than Mexico is, okay? New Mexico, which was named for the Mexica people, the Aztecs, because New Mexico was their likely point of origin. That's probably where they started before they ended up in the central plateau of Mexico, right? That's where the name came from. New Mexico is not named for Mexico. New Mexico is named, though, for the same group of people that Mexico is named for. And by the way, when Texas won its independence, why were there so many Americans in Texas? Well, there were so many Americans in Texas because Mexico had invited them into Texas, because they had a whole lot of empty land that those people could come in and occupy. And by coming in and occupying it, they created a buffer between Mexico and the Comanche. That's what Mexico was trying to accomplish. They wanted to put American settlers between them and the Comanche. That's why they invited settlers, American settlers, into what would become Texas. Okay? So the history is never as cut and dried, never as black and white as we always want to make it out to be. And by the way, both sides want to try and make it black and white. Both sides want to say, oh, this is good and these people are bad. These people are good and these people are bad. And the truth is, all people are shades of gray. There is no nation on earth that has ever been entirely good. There's no nation on earth that's ever been entirely bad. If you want to attack Nazi Germany, they're a pretty safe, pretty safe group of people to attack. That's probably as close to completely bad as it gets, right? But there's never any such thing as an entirely good nation, right?
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to war, because no war has ever been fought that atrocities haven't been committed by both sides in that war.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing that I wish people would remember, is that number one, history is the truth, and you should study it so that you don't repeat it, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes over and over. But number two, history is not black and white. It's not good and evil. Everything's shades of gray. Okay? Even the best people sometimes do bad things.
Yeah. And
even the worst people sometimes do good things.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's one of the things to me that you have to remember as you study history.
Another topic I want to talk about, we bombed Iran Trump bombs Iran without congressional approval.
Right. As
massive.
Every president before him since Jimmy Carter did.
Okay, so that's kind of you cut me off at the pass. We've hung out too much.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's that on the nose. So Trump bombs Iran, no congressional approval. The news just is just like, oh my God, what is this guy doing? He's bombing people without asking Congress. Who does that? But go ahead and pick up where I'm leaving off here. Who does that, Norm? Who bombs people? Who bombs countries without running it through the proper ropes? Who does that?
Every American president since Jimmy Carter has done it.
Okay.
And plenty before him did it too, by the way. But every American since Jimmy Carter has done it. Reagan did it. Bush did it. Clinton did it. Obama did it. Biden did it.
Again, I'm not
both
picking
Bushes, by the way. I
but
think I only mentioned one.
Obama bombed quite a few, like, I wouldn't say countries, but facilities. Like Obama,
those facilities are in countries.
And this is something I'm not very political. I've never voted, but I will say this. One thing that I appreciated about Obama that a lot of people didn't appreciate was his trigger finger. Like, I'm somebody, the older I get, like, I kind of want a president, red or blue, who is willing to, do some wild shit in order to basically let the world know. Like, I want a president that barks like a dog and has a good growl kind of. And Obama was a good representation of that. And he was as far anti-MAGA as possible. But I guess the point is, even he was like, hey, let's kill a bunch of people tonight and let's not run it by anybody.
Yeah. So let's talk about Barack Obama. Okay. Barack Obama, number one, was responsible for multiple strikes on other countries. Okay. While we're comparing people to Donald Trump, Barack Obama's administration deported more people than the Trump administration has. The cages that everybody talked about and putting children in during the first Trump administration, those cages were built by the Obama administration. Okay. All these chain link pens that you see immigrants being put in, those were built by the Obama administration. Okay. Now, so by saying that, am I saying Barack Obama was a bad guy? No, what I'm saying is Barack Obama and Donald Trump were not as far apart as people think. Okay. The difference between the two of them is a lot more subtle than you would think. However, the biggest difference between the two of them is personality more than policy. Okay. Barack Obama had a pleasant personality that a lot of people liked. Yeah. Donald Trump doesn't. He never has had. He's always been a jerk.
I guess explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. How is it? And this is a bipartisan conversation. How is it that Obama can deport way more people than Trump did in his first term?
Because the press reports it completely differently. The press didn't report most of that about Obama.
But I mean, a Google search is 3 seconds. You would just I just don't understand how.
But most people have a knee-jerk need to believe whatever their political end of the spectrum tells them to believe. And they don't spend a whole lot of time looking at opposing viewpoints. It's one of the problems our country has now, right? Is that we're all so insular. All we hear is other people preaching to the choir. We don't hear the other side speak, We've become so polarized and so insular that we don't listen to the other side. And so whether you're on the right or on the left, probably all you listen to is people that agree with you. And our press certainly doesn't do a very good job of informing people. Our press chose sides long ago, Some of the press are basically branches of the Republican Party. Some of the press are basically a branch of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And so the press, too, is going to tell you what they want you to hear. And we've talked repeatedly since this program began about how it used to be that the job of the press was to inform. Now the media sees their job as to persuade rather than to inform. And so the very nature of the media has changed.
I guess like my biggest, with everything we've talked about tonight, is I don't see the difference. But like the world does. So like the whole, officer involved shootings. Like if you ask like a basic person, like how many black people are killed by police a year, they would be like, 10,000. But it's closer to like 80 or something, like maybe even smaller than that. Like the police kill way more white people than any other race. And again, this is not a bootlicking statement saying leave the police alone. I'm just saying the numbers at which black people are killed by police are astronomically low in the grand scheme of like the other people that are shot. That being said, take 30 days in Chicago where it's black on black violence and count up the casualties, and you'll probably pass the nationwide, but when you watch the news, it's all you see is white police officers are hunting black people. And you don't hear a peep about the black on black violence that causes mass mayhem and mass death.
Yeah, well, Yes.
What is the
Although
difference?
it's what you've got there is a false equivalency, right? Yes, the most dangerous people to black people are other black people. I mean, but that's true of most races. Okay, most races you're more likely to be murdered by a member of your own race than a member of another race. Okay. However, yes, there is a huge amount of black on black crime, but black on black crime and police shootings don't have anything to do with each other. Okay, and I think that's why people, when you start saying that, a lot of people are automatically going to just tune you out. Okay.
The reason I say it though is because I'm not trying to say that they're equal. I'm saying if I was a black person and I had so much,
if you really wanted to save black lives, you'd focus more on black crime than you would on police shootings.
Well, I would at least see it as an equal problem with my funding and with my voice. I would just say like, hey, if Black lives truly matter, which I think they do, like you would think that, again, I'm not trying to say either one is more or less, but you would think under the pretenses of Black Lives Matter, then truly we need to look at it as hey, there's a lot of black lives that are being taken every day. You can call it abortion. You can call it, gang violence. There's a lot of black souls that either never get to be here or they get dispatched every day. Yeah. And to me, like just focusing on the smallest number, again, I'm not saying that police involved shootings are okay. And it's only 70, so who cares? I'm not saying that at all. 70 lives is too many. I just don't understand the imbalance of what people care about. You know what I'm saying? Like the imbalance of give a shit, I guess, of again, I am in agreement that I think Black lives tremendously matter, but I think that in that mantra, you have to look at all Black lives being lost in America the same way as a bad thing. Like this is happening too much.
Yeah.
You're doing research. You never do that. You never do that. We're about to get some wild stuff here, folks.
Well, it's because I think our numbers are way off. I want to at least be in the ballpark.
Yeah, I am throwing out, but I know that if you look at the amount of officer-involved shootings, a lot of them, like the majority of them, are white people, and then the amount of them that are unarmed is astronomically low compared to the whole pie.
Right.
But go ahead. Yeah, it looks like you're looking some stuff up.
I am, but I'm not. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time doing it.
Well, I can Google it. What information are you trying to find?
I was just looking for numbers of unarmed blacks shot by the police.
Okay.
I was just curious and by the way, I know when you throw unarmed in there, it changes the numbers significantly, but that's the one we're really concerned with, right? This is when unarmed people are shot by the police.
But even then, though, it's that God is in the details. Like, so say an unarmed person is shot by the police, but then you got to have to break those down. Okay, well, how many of those people were shouting threats, saying,
right?
How many of those people they couldn't tell if they were, again, like it's
right.
I'm glad they break the statistics down, but if you're not there, it's really hard to have an opinion unless you were there and involved. Now, again, I'm not saying that.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. And oftentimes, and again, it has to do with our media. Oftentimes the narrative that's presented in the media is not true, right? Or you hear two completely different narratives from the different, branches of the media, if you will. And so, unfortunately, and this was a term coined, I believe, by somebody in the Trump administration, we live in a post-truth age, where the truth isn't nearly as important to a lot of people as the spin that you can put on it. And that's one of the problems with our society is truth went out the window, And yeah, you can blame politicians for that. You can blame politicians of every stripe for that. You can also blame the media for that. The media threw the truth out the window a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's one of the frustrating things about our society today. What I will say is this. I've seen a lot of research into the shooting of unarmed people by the police.
Mm-hmm.
And the narrative, the truth that the data is actually supported by data usually does not match the narrative that's presented in the press and in our popular culture. First of all, police shootings of unarmed people are very rare. Second, a lot more white people and Hispanic people are shot than black people. However, as a percentage of the population, it tends to be a little higher among black people. The percentage of our prison populations that are made up of black people is a lot higher, okay? And that then creates the argument, well, is it because we have a racist system, or is it because blacks commit crimes at inordinately high numbers? And to be honest with you, I don't know that there's one actual answer for those questions. My guess is that there are multiple answers for those questions. And so, our society certainly has problems. And those problems are problems that we haven't done a great job of dealing with. But it gets even harder to deal with those problems when nobody talks about them in a truthful way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems that we have, is that there's so little truth out there being presented by either side of the political spectrum. Everything becomes politicized. And once things become politicized, then the truth has this tendency to, if not actually go away, at least to be shaded very heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that problem. It's hard to know what the truth is. And so we tend to fall back on whatever our chosen source of news is. And more, it's social media.
Yeah.
And I am horrified very often by how inaccurate the information, and frankly, completely made up much of the information being presented on social media is.
Yeah.
You scan through YouTube and TikTok, and you're presented all these things as though they are facts that are patently false or bald-faced lies. There's no truth to them whatsoever, yet they're presented to you on social media as though they're absolute fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as people are getting their news, and by the way, the regular news media isn't much better. They're a little better, but they're not much better. And I understand why people get their news from social media. But please be aware that the news you're getting from social media is something you probably ought to double check after you've seen it.
Yeah.
Because so much of it is complete misinformation.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild out there. I guess to wrap it up, my main frustration is you hear a lot about white privilege and stuff. And I think it's massively true when it comes to sins being offensive. Like the whites get the front of the line of well, they did it and that's disgusting. And I'm not I guess my thing is that Bible verse, who is without sin can cast the first stone. I think in this pursuit of hating Western civilization, people completely drop any responsibility for anything that, their people. And for another thing, in my opinion, I think the more and more that people are categorize themselves well, I'm this because of my skin color. To me, I think that's an unevolved way of thinking. I think if you're in the phone book, you're a human. You know what I mean? I don't care who your grandpa is. Help us.
Well, first of all, a lot of ethnologists would tell you that race doesn't exist. Race is an artificial construct. There's only one race, and that's the human race.
Yeah.
Right now, there are variations within the human race, but there's only one race, and that's human. Culture is far more important than race, but does then culture become part of race? And, there's a lot of questions. But here's what I'm going to say. When you talk about white privilege, and yes, white privilege exists. It's not, to me, as driving a force as people make it out to be. As a matter of fact, what's much more important in our country is wealth and fame than race. Okay. Good example, O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson is almost universally acknowledged to have been guilty of double homicide, right? He was found guilty. Why? Because he's famous and he's wealthy. And race didn't have anything to do with it. Race should have worked against him, right? If it was all about race, O.J. Simpson was a black man. He should have been convicted. But we found that, again, fame and money trump race. Fame and money and the privilege that come with fame and money are a lot more important than race in our culture. And so are there racial prejudices? Absolutely. I'm a person that believes that all of us are racist to one extent or another. Okay. And I know a lot of people get offended when I say that. When I say that, I don't mean that we all hate people of other races. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that we all make assumptions and generalizations based on race. We can't help it. It's the way our brain works. Okay. So when I say that we're all racist, I'm talking about soft racism. I'm not talking about, the kind where you dislike somebody automatically because of their race. I'm saying we're all racist in that we all make assumptions about people based on their appearance. And race is part of their appearance, right? And by the way, we have a million prejudices based on appearance, and most of them are not racial, right? We judge people for whether they're skinny or fat, whether they're tall or short, whether they, how they dress, what their hair looks like, what their hair color is. We judge people on a million different things that are visual, and only a fraction of those have to do with race. And so we can't help that. It's part of how we work. We are visual creatures, right? And so it's part of how our brain works.
I think a part of it too is like the whole idea of fair is kind of inhuman. So like, I'll just put it this way. Like I say this, I don't look Mexican, but I am Mexican.
Right.
That being said though, for the past probably 8 years, usually at any job that I have, I get what anybody who's not me that works there would call special treatment. Like my leash is a lot longer than anybody else at work, any job I've had in the last 8 years. But my argument to that is nobody has ever shown me any kind of favor because they were a nice person. It was, I think that I showed them enough that they felt like the need to let me know that I was, like, hey, we want you here, right. We'll deal. So again, my question is this, like, if all that stuff is real, like, how is a fat Mexican dropout doing well? Like, it really boggles my mind when I'll have people tell me, like, dude,
and that's why America is a great country.
But the thing is, I'll have like white people tell me just like, man, it really sucks for Mexicans. And I'm just like, I'm Mexican. I was telling May this. I'm Mexican. I'm obese. We're talking about how people judge everything. I'm Mexican. I'm obese. I'm crazy. I have, bipolar disorder, OCD. I have all these things, and yet somehow I'm able to be gainfully employed, and not only gainfully employed, like almost shown favor. Like you would think that I'm like white, and at any company I've been at the last 8 years, like the owner's son, highly educated, but none of those. So my thing is this, like, if all of that stuff is true, then why have you telling me that Derek Relaford, all this stuff I just listed off, wiggled through the system somehow? Yeah. I don't.
All that stuff is true, but that doesn't mean that all that stuff is the only determining factor. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I'm saying you can overcome. There is nobody. Well, I don't know about nobody. Most people in the United States are not so prejudiced that you can't overcome that. Okay. Most people in the United States, and this is what, when I talk about free market economies and free market principles, if you let people's greed work to your advantage, that's kind of the right system, right? Let people's own selfish interests work to your advantage. So in other words, if you prove to people that you can do things that they need done, then that's the way to get ahead, right? You find somebody, you prove to them, somebody, preferably somebody with money, you find somebody, you convince them that you can do the things that they need done, and that's the way you get ahead in life. Okay? And you've been pretty good at doing that.
But wouldn't that be that where I'm sitting right now in life is 100% based on merit rather than anything that I had nothing to control?
I don't know that it's 100% based on merit. I think luck comes into it some too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying a lot, but I'm saying a lot of factors come in. Being in the right place at the right time, right? A lot of times doing certain things is all about being in the right place at the right time. Well, you could be in the right place at the right time because of pure dumb luck, or you could be in the right place at the right time because you've been paying attention and you've been smart enough to be in the right place at the right time, right? So a big part of success in this country is being in the right place at the right time. For some people, it's all about planning and preparation. That's what's put them in the right place at the right time. For some of us, it's pure dumb luck that we were in the right place at the right time, And so I think a lot of people can say that they've gotten ahead because of their skill or because of their ability to do this, or this. But most of us, even though that may be true, most of us have had, at least from time to time, a little push by Lady Luck too.
Yeah.
Or those that don't make it have had a little pullback from Lady Luck at times.
I think that obviously like nepotism is, to me, nepotism is worse than in my opinion, to me, I would, you have the whole affirmative action and thing. To me, right. The worst person on the job site is the person, not the person who was hired just because of their skin color, because they were trying to meet a quota. It's whoever works there and their parents own it. You know what I'm saying? Like someone who's just there along for the ride. So when somebody hires a family member, to me, but even then,
a lot of times you hire family members and family members really work well because family members share in the vision and they've grown up around it and they know what they're doing.
But what I'm talking about,
what you're talking about is a family member that's there purely because they're a family member.
But in my
they would never be employed otherwise.
Yeah. But in my history of working in the American workforce, I've dealt with working with a lot of nepotism hires. But I will confidently say, any of the nepotism hires that were not worth a shit did not last long. No. I would throw my own child out of my business if he was I'd be love you, son, get the hell out, go work somewhere else.
Again, because money talks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If somebody costs you money, you're generally not going to keep them around, even if you're related to them. Yeah,
I think if you have good ideas, good ways to implement ideas, hard work really has nothing to do with it. It's more about just figuring out ways to get everybody on the team to the bottom line quicker and stuff. I don't know many business people in America that if you're able to produce for them, I don't know many businessmen in America that'll be like, okay, this is great. You're going to produce some stuff for our business and stuff. Who did you vote for? What's your I don't know many people that are going to be able to look past the money that they're making or whatever they're gaining that they're getting in life.
Right.
I don't know many people who would let any type of personal politics get between them and a sandwich. I'm talking about business people.
Right.
I don't know many people that would really stop what they're doing if it was, well, I feel this way, And another thing, I don't know. Just to me, I think you're right. I think money talks. I think merit talks. I think if you can prove that you're valuable in a room, I don't think your skin color is really going to, only if you're able to prove that you can do what you say you can do. You know what I'm saying?
Where skin color comes in, though, okay, is, and not just skin color, but all of those visual prejudices, where that sometimes comes in is who gets a chance, right? Sometimes people don't get a chance because of the way they look. Sometimes people do get a chance because of the way they look, okay? For instance, it's kind of a joke within the industry, and I don't know if it's as bad now as it was a few years back, but pharmaceuticals representatives, the people that sell pharmaceuticals to doctors, had a reputation for being insanely good looking for a long time, right? Whether they were male or female, but especially insanely good looking females working as pharmaceuticals representatives. So were they getting an opportunity because of how they look? Probably, yeah. Okay. And so, that exists. And racism is kind of works in a similar way. You don't get a chance because of how you look. Sometimes that's a racial thing. Sometimes it's completely other things, but
yeah.
But that's what I think it is. I think it has more to do with opportunity, not with the ability the ability to take advantage of that opportunity, but with the opportunities.
Last thing to nip this in the bud. Do you think that when it comes to like American companies and trying to kind of curtail that whole situation, do you feel that like major sports teams like NBA, NFL, do you feel like they are kind of doing it right, considering like I firmly believe that major sports teams they do not care anything about your skin color.
All they care about is whether you can help them win.
So that being said, when it's 100% merit-based,
generally speaking, professional sports is pretty much merit-based. You're going to get ahead or not get ahead based on whether or not they think you can help them win games.
If we just model America after the NBA, will we be okay?
No, not necessarily. The NBA has its own set of problems, and the NFL and others, they have their own sets of problems. But when it comes to it being a merit-based system, they are that, yeah. Okay. But again, though, don't mistake merit with necessarily the best talent. Because sometimes the most talented player is not the best player. Yeah. And that's where sports really struggle sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. For instance, the New England Patriots during their dynasty, they were winning with a lot of players that other teams passed over. Tom Brady, for example, was a 6th round draft pick. Okay. And they had plenty of other players that were amazing players for them, but were passed over by other teams, right? But the Patriots were looking for a particular type of player, and intelligence was more important to them than physical talent. Mm-hmm. Certain character types were more important to them than physical talent. Now, physical talent was still important, don't get me wrong, but there were other factors to them that were more important than physical talent. Sometimes the most talented player is not always the best player.
Well, I mean, that goes with music too. You can have a drummer who is phenomenal, but to me, the real measure of a quote good drummer is a drummer who knows when to shut the hell up.
Yeah.
When it's like, hey, right now your job is to drive us, to the end of this part of the song,
right,
and just keep us on the road. We don't need you spinning your sticks and doing backflip. It's to me, like you can take some songs, you can take them and then you can show somebody the song and they could argue that like, well, that's a pretty boring drum beat. It's like, yeah, if it was any different, the song would suck. Like you wouldn't be listening anymore. So like, to me, I think just because you're the fastest and the most talented, if you don't have, first of all, we're talking about professional sports teams, not professional cities that just have one player out there that they have all their money in. Like, if you can't work with a team, if you can't take instruction, if you can't learn to like live for the herd on the court and you're just trying to be a beast all the time, you're probably not going to be a great teammate. You know what I mean? Like, you're just out there, you have 4 guys out there in the NBA and you have one guy who's rogue. He might make some impressive shots. He might do some stuff. But at the end of the day, I think at that point, if you get any rings or anything, this goes back to what you said earlier. That's 100% luck. If you have one person on your team that's not even there, they're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we talked too much about other stuff, but we have 6 minutes. What were the best songs of 1991?
Well, let me throw out some albums, and then next week we can do songs. Okay. Here are some albums that were released in 1991. Nirvana's Nevermind.
Okay.
Pearl Jam, 10. Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. So 2 different albums from them. Metallica's Black Album was released in 91. Queensryche released Empire in 91. Red Hot Chili Peppers released Blood Sugar Sex Magic in 91. Van Halen released For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge in 91. Let's see, there are probably a few others. Those are the ones that I just jotted down up here at the top of the page. Okay, so yeah, some pretty iconic albums were released in 91.
I've seen a meme of a stack of CDs of the ones you listed, and it was like, what a wild, year of music.
Yeah, well, and that one, it's like 8 CDs and points out that they were all released like within a month of each other or something like that. So yeah. Next week, we'll take a look at 1991, some of the songs of 91, and we'll do a song draft like we've done and turn it into a playlist for you.
Well, you got 3 minutes left. In your opinion, as a music consumer, do the 90s rate up there as far as like a good decade for music? And if so, why do you think they had it so dialed in? To me, I think the 90s were it.
Yeah, I think whatever decade you kind of grew up in is the one you're going to think was it, Well,
when I say it, I mean America was very in tune with what bands were being promoted, what albums were coming out. And now it's more of a niche thing. You have to go find people. So
the 90s was kind of the last gasp of that. Yeah. Okay. So in the 90s, you still followed, you still listened to albums. You still followed bands and knew when their releases were coming out and that kind of thing. And that's gone by the wayside. That's been a victim of the internet, among other things. But that was also true in the 70s and 80s as well,
Yeah.
So, I think the 90s, especially the early 90s, produced some really good music.
And that goes beyond the players and the songwriters. It's about like the suits were kind of doing it right.
Yeah. And also there was a change coming, right? Okay. The glam rock of the 80s was dying out. Alternative and grunge and all that was coming on in the early 90s. And so there was this transition from the glitz and glam of the 80s into the alternative and grunge of the 90s. And there was also this transition going on from rock to hip hop, and rap was becoming more and more popular. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that started in the 80s, but really started to reach fruition in the early 90s, And so, we were in flux as a society there in the early 90s.
Yeah. I kind of miss the, I've talked about it before, I miss the programming. I don't like this. I'm the pilot. But now, I'm flying the plane. I don't like that. I want to be handed shit to like,
I get what you're saying. I'm that way when it comes to watching TV, right? I prefer live TV to streaming for, not always, but at times for that reason, because I don't want to have to think about what do I want to watch. I want to just turn it on and watch what's on.
Pluto is the app, man. Like we have Pluto on pretty much 24/7 in our house.
Yeah.
There's a channel that's just strictly Survivor episodes back to back,
right?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we usually have that on here in the kitchen. But like I'm the same. Like to me, like I think that streaming is really cool, and I do think that this next generation of people, that's like, I get how like they would prefer that, but and it's this whole in my opinion, the entertainment industry took it too far in the whole it's like I missed it whenever you just pulled up and somebody came out and pumped your gas for you. Now it's like, hey, it's self-serve. It's like, well, what if I don't know which gas to get? It's like I don't know things, like I much prefer basing, like the shit you watch off of like shit that people talk about all the time about being awful, of like, program directors, production, producers and stuff. Like I enjoyed like, this is your options, and then even if you just keep it on TV, like around mid 90s when the satellites kind of came, when you went from having 30 channels to 1,000.
Yeah.
That was pre-streaming, but you kind of lost me at that point. I'm not smart enough.
And that's the thing. Choice is great, but choice can also be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You can have so much choice that it's hard to make an informed decision then once you have so many choices. Sure.
And I think the main thing is you don't care enough to develop, I don't want to research this topic enough to find out.
Yeah.
You just have one that most people like, it's like,
Yeah. Like I said, that's me. Sometimes I don't want to think about what I want to watch. I just want to turn it on and watch what's on.
Yeah. Well, we're at the hour mark. Next week, we will go into more details about the albums and the songs that we were going to talk about. We kind of got off on some tangents.
Yeah,
I forgot I had some stuff down.
So yeah, think about songs from '91. Join in with us next week, and we'll talk about songs from '91, and we'll do a song draft and a playlist.
Yeah.
For 1991.
Yeah, I think. Well, would you want to do Wednesday same time, at least for the rest of the summer?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. Bring us in. Goodbye, Norm.
Thank you.
Good show. Everybody have a safe weekend.
Yeah, have a safe and sane 4th of July. Get out there and have fun. Try not to blow any fingers off.
That's what I was going to say. Enjoy your country. Love your country, no matter where it is. Celebrate, but please tune in next week with the same amount of digits on your fingers.
Please still be able to count to 10 next week.
Yeah, please be able to type in your comments. It's just we don't want to see a bunch of just like letters, because you're just nubbing it out on the. Please keep your fingers. I think we said it enough times. We're being serious. Just keep them. All right, man. We can get out of here. Anything else?
No, just thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
All right, we'll see y'all later.